The ship floated silently in the dark stretch of space, a thin silver streak against the black void. Inside, Elias Ward adjusted the strap of his uniform and tried to steady his nerves. It was not fear that made his hands tremble slightly, but the weight of expectation. Humanity had been summoned to the Aurelian Concord, the oldest and most powerful interstellar alliance. No human had ever stood in their halls before. Now he was the first, and the eyes of 1 billion humans rested on him. The chamber was immense. Light shimmered from crystal-like panels that floated above the floor, casting colors that changed as if they were alive. Elias stepped onto the platform that extended from the entrance into the center of the hall. The air hummed softly with a low frequency, vibrating like a quiet song beneath his feet. He could feel it in his chest, a subtle reminder that this place belonged to beings far older and more practiced in the ways of order than any human civilization. From the far end of the room, a figure approached. She was tall, taller than any human could be comfortably, her presence both regal and commanding. The Aurelians, as they called themselves, were elegant and precise. Every movement they made seemed deliberate, every gesture intentional. Her eyes, a shimmering silver, regarded him with a mix of curiosity and calculation. "You will bow," she said, her voice calm but carrying an authority that made it seem like the words themselves were law. "It is the custom of our Concord."
"All visitors bow before the High Envoy."
Elias paused, his lips pressed together, a thin line. To bow would be to accept a hierarchy he did not understand and had not earned, yet he did not want to disrespect the envoy either. He took a measured breath and said, "I will not bow, not because I refuse respect, but because I seek to understand before I submit." He could see the slight movements among the Aurelians, their long fingers brushing against the smooth surfaces of their robes, their heads tilting as they studied him. The High Envoy did not look angry, only surprised. Surprise, he realized, was far more dangerous than anger in beings like this. "You are human," she said slowly, as if tasting the word on her tongue. "You think in ways we have not accounted for. Why do you resist a custom so simple?" "Because," Elias replied evenly, "humanity has never bowed without understanding. We value reason over ritual and choice over command." Her expression remained unreadable. She tilted her head slightly, and for a moment the glow of the chamber reflected off her silver eyes, making it seem like starlight was trapped within them. "Then tell me, human," she said, "what is worth more, the act of obedience or the act of understanding?" Elias took a step closer to the center of the platform. His voice was calm but carried a firmness that surprised even him. "Obedience without understanding is empty. It is the vessel without water. But understanding without the willingness to act is equally empty. Humanity acts, even when we do not yet fully understand. But when we act with thought, with reflection. That is our strength." A silence fell. It was not uncomfortable, but it was heavy. Every Aurelian in the chamber seemed to pause, suspended in a moment that stretched longer than seconds. The envoy's silver eyes did not waver from him. "You speak boldly," she said at last. "Yet we measure worth through action."
"We value tradition. Your words are
intriguing, but they do not yet carry proof." "Then allow me," Elias said, "to show you. I am here not merely to speak, but to represent what humanity can bring to the Concord. We are not perfect. We have failed, often. But we have also endured. We have risen when the odds were impossible, rebuilt when all seemed lost, and created when no one thought creation possible. That is our proof." The envoy considered him. She made no gesture, no sign of emotion, yet Elias could feel the shift in the chamber. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. The Aurelians were not used to such words from species they considered young, fragile, or chaotic. Humans were chaotic, yes, but perhaps not weak, perhaps not incapable. Many species speak of resilience, she said finally. They speak of survival. But few can show humility. Few can lower themselves when necessary. Elias's throat tightened. He had not expected this turn in the conversation, yet it felt like the moment he had been waiting for. He straightened his back, keeping his voice calm. Humanity has learned to lower itself in ways many would consider weakness. We lower ourselves to help one another, to forgive, to learn, to admit mistakes. Humility is not weakness, it is preparation. We rise stronger after lowering ourselves. For a long moment, the envoy simply regarded him. Then she spoke, softly this time, almost a whisper for the chamber to hear. "And yet you will not bow before me." "I bow," Elias said, "only when I understand the meaning of the bow. I am willing to bow when I know it is deserved, not demanded." The chamber grew quieter, the hum of energy beneath their feet slowing, as though even the building itself was listening. For the first time, Elias noticed that the Auralians were not perfectly still. Some tilted their heads, some moved their hands in small, thoughtful gestures. They were processing, calculating, reconsidering. "You are unlike any species we have encountered," the envoy said finally. "Your words carry weight. Your defiance is unusual." "Perhaps," Elias said. "But our defiance is not born of pride. It is born of the desire to do what is right, to understand before agreeing, to act with wisdom rather than fear." A ripple of acknowledgement passed through the room. He realized then that he had not only spoken for himself, but for humanity as a whole. Each time he spoke truthfully, he carried the weight of billions of people who had survived wars, built civilizations, healed wounds, and reached for the stars. He was not alone. The envoy stepped closer. Her presence was even more imposing up close, yet there was no threat in her posture, only the kind of careful attention that could unbalance someone with a weaker mind. She stopped just a few meters from him. "Then you shall be watched," she said. "Your actions will be measured, your words recorded. If humanity is to join the Concord, you must demonstrate not only thought, but understanding, restraint, and courage." Elias nodded. "I accept this." Humanity accepts this. Quote. For the first time, the envoy's expression softened, just slightly. "Then perhaps there is more to your kind than we have believed. We shall see." As Elias was escorted to the side of the chamber, he looked out at the endless expanse of stars beyond the tall crystalline windows. Somewhere out there, beyond even the reach of the Concord, human ships were following him, waiting, watching. They had sent him as a representative, but in truth, he was only the first step. What he had said here, what he had refused to do, would echo through countless worlds. The chamber doors closed behind him, and the hum of the energy returned to its normal rhythm. Yet the change was undeniable. Something fundamental had shifted in the hearts and minds of the Auralians. They had expected obedience and submission. Instead, they had encountered thought, courage, and humility, the kind that chooses not to bend blindly. The priest, Elias, felt the weight of his own pulse in his ears. He had survived the first test, but he knew it was only the beginning. The Concord would measure humanity in ways far beyond ceremony, testing their ingenuity, compassion, and the quiet strength that humans carried within themselves. Yet he felt a flicker of hope. If humanity could survive itself, perhaps it could survive the stars. He left the chamber with a steady step, each movement measured but confident. Somewhere in the distance the envoy watched, her thoughts unreadable, and yet Elias knew that he had made a mark. He had spoken, and in speaking, he had reminded even the oldest beings in the galaxy that intelligence, understanding, and courage could sometimes be stronger than tradition, authority, or fear. The path ahead was uncertain. The trials would come. one by one. But for now, humanity had taken its first step among the stars, and it had done so with its head held high, not in arrogance, but in quiet, undeniable strength. And somewhere deep inside him, Elias knew that this was only the beginning of a story that would be remembered for ages. The days that followed in the Aurelian Concord were unlike anything Elias had imagined. The chambers and halls of the Concord were vast and labyrinthine, filled with beings whose every movement seemed precise, deliberate, and infinitely calculated. Each corridor pulsed with a soft glow, a constant reminder that this place was alive with intelligence, older than humanity itself. The walls were translucent, and through them Elias could glimpse distant stars, swirling gas clouds, and clusters of planets. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also intimidating. Every step he took reminded him of the gulf between human history and the timeless order of the Aurelians. Yet Elias did not feel small. He felt alert, aware. Humanity had never been the strongest in the galaxy, nor the fastest, nor the most technologically advanced, but humans had survived where others had fallen. They had endured chaos, adapted, and discovered strength in unexpected places. That knowledge gave him courage, even in the midst of beings who could, without effort, extinguish entire fleets. He was brought to a chamber that overlooked a planet with rings of silver ice. Here, the High Envoy had summoned him for his next trial, not a test of obedience, but of understanding. The chamber contained no weapons, no traps, no threats, only the envoy, several of her advisors, and a table of strange instruments that pulsed softly with light. "You will observe," the envoy said, "and then you will respond. Your words will be weighed as carefully as any action. The Concord values insight above all else. You may speak, but speak with care. Humanity has survived by understanding. We shall see if you can continue to do so here."
Elias nodded. "I will try to learn and to understand."
"Then I will speak truthfully, as my people always do." The envoy motioned to the table. A holographic display rose above it, showing images of worlds, stars, and civilizations. Some were thriving, their cities bright and humming with energy. Others were struggling, their surfaces scarred by past conflicts or natural disasters.
"Observe these civilizations," the envoy said. "Each has been presented with choices."
Some chose expansion, others chose cooperation. Some chose strength, above all, others wisdom. Humanity is now among them. You will explain how your species would act, and why. Elias stepped closer, studying the images. His mind raced as he considered the countless paths humanity had taken. Humans had built empires that fell, inventions that failed, and alliances that dissolved, but they had also created art, music, medicine, and technology. They had explored worlds far beyond their reach, and they had chosen time and again to help each other, even when it was inconvenient or dangerous. "The first world," he said, pointing to a planet that glowed red and orange with volcanoes and shifting continents, "is harsh and unpredictable. A species here would have to adapt constantly. If humans were placed there, we would first study the environment, understand its dangers and resources, and then develop ways to survive without destroying it. We do not act blindly. We think first, and then we act." One of the advisors, a being whose skin shimmered like liquid metal, tilted its head. "And what if others demand resources? What if neighboring species seek to conquer or control this planet? Will humanity submit as others do, or will you take what you want?" Elias considered the question carefully. "We will not take what we do not need. Humanity has survived not by dominance, but by cooperation. We negotiate, we communicate, we build trust. If others seek control, we respond with understanding first, and only then with firmness. Strength is not always physical. It is also patience, creativity, and persistence. That is how we endure." The holographic display shifted to a second planet, green and blue, covered in forests and oceans. It was peaceful but delicate, a world that could be easily destroyed by carelessness. Here, Elias continued, humanity would act as a steward. We have learned that short-term gain often leads to long-term loss. We protect and preserve because our survival depends on balance. Even if no one else values the planet, we would care, because we understand that our choices affect the future. A murmur passed through the envoy and her advisors. It was subtle, but Elias noticed it. The Auralians were used to species that acted only for power, for advantage, for immediate gain. Humans were different. Humans acted for reasons that often required patience, foresight, and empathy. These were traits that the Concord had rarely seen combined in any one species. The Third World, Elias said, is home to a civilization much like ours. They are young, curious, and full of potential. Some will succeed, others will fail. Humanity would approach them not as conquerors, but as partners. We share knowledge, exchange ideas, and learn from each other. Competition can drive growth, yes, but cooperation drives survival. We understand that no species exists alone. Even the strongest fall if they do not recognize the value of others. The envoy's silver eyes lingered on him. And what if they misunderstand you? What if they see your actions as weakness? Then we explain, Elias said. We are patient. We teach through example, through action, through listening. Strength is not always loud or immediate. It is quiet, persistent, and often invisible until it changes everything. Humanity has survived for millennia because we endure misunderstandings, conflicts, and failures. And we still rise. That is our way. A long silence filled the chamber. The envoy leaned slightly forward, her hands resting on the edge of the table. You speak of patience and understanding, but many species see patience as inaction, understanding as hesitation. Why do you trust that this will work? Because humanity has no other choice. Elias replied, We are small in the universe, fragile in comparison to many, but we are clever, adaptable, and willing to learn. We survive not because we are stronger than others, but because we persist, because we think, because we care. These traits have allowed us to endure every trial, every challenge, every disaster. If we did not trust in them, we would have fallen long ago. The envoy and her advisors exchanged quiet, subtle signals. Elias did not understand their language, but he could sense the change in tone. The room had shifted from judgment to calculation, from expectation to curiosity. The humans' approach, the very thing the Concord had not expected, was becoming clear. It was a kind of strength the Auralians could not measure with their usual tools. You are unusual, the envoy said finally. Humanity does not act with brute force. You do not seek conquest or domination. You act through understanding, patience, and subtle influence. Yet there is courage in your methods. It is rare, even among species older than yours. Elias felt a small spark of pride, tempered by humility. Humanity has survived not by avoiding challenge, but by embracing it carefully. We face danger, uncertainty, and even failure, not with arrogance, but with persistence. We rise again, because we choose to. That is our courage. The display shifted one last time, showing a planet scarred by past wars, its cities half destroyed, its people struggling to rebuild. And here? The envoy asked. How would humanity act when faced with ruins, despair, and loss? Elias looked at the planet and felt the weight of his species' history. Humans had faced similar worlds countless times. We rebuild, he said simply. We honor what was lost, we learn from our mistakes, and we create again. Sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, but always with determination. Destruction does not define us. our response does. That is humanity's promise. The envoy remained silent for a long moment. Then she spoke, almost softly. Perhaps there is more to your kind than we have believed. You do not seek to dominate, yet you influence. You do not demand respect, yet you inspire it. You do not obey blindly, yet you endure. Perhaps we have underestimated you. Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Humanity is often underestimated. We are not the strongest, the fastest, or the most ancient. But we survive. We adapt, we learn. And when the universe demands it, we rise. The envoy studied him closely. Your people have not yet proven themselves among the stars. But your words show a kind of strength that cannot be measured by weapons, fleets, or ceremony. Perhaps this is the beginning of understanding. Elias felt a strange mixture of relief and anticipation. The first step had been speaking truth. The second step had been demonstrating insight. The true trial he knew was still ahead. Tests of wisdom, of patience, of humanity's ability to endure in ways the Concord had not yet imagined. Yet for the first time since he had entered the halls of the Aurelian Concord, he felt that he was not only representing humanity, he was proving that humans had a place among the stars. Not by force, not by dominance, but by courage, creativity, and the quiet power of persistence. The chamber doors opened, and he was led back to the observation galleries where he could watch the stars beyond. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine what humanity might achieve, if given the chance. Civilizations could rise and fall, empires could crumble, yet humanity endured, not because of power, but because of resilience. And in that thought, Elias felt the spark of hope, small but steady, that would carry him forward into the trials yet to come. Elias had been in the Concord for what felt like days, though he had lost track of time. The vast halls of crystal and light, the soft hum of energy underfoot, and the ever-watchful eyes of the Aurelians had become a constant part of his life. He had learned to walk carefully, speak thoughtfully, and observe everything with attention. Every detail mattered. Every gesture, every word could change the way his people were seen among the stars. Today the trial was different. It was not a test of words or reasoning, but a challenge of observation and ingenuity. The high envoy led him to a massive chamber, its floor smooth and reflective, its walls filled with complex patterns of light that shifted like flowing water. At the center of the room was a device unlike anything Elias had ever seen. It was a sphere of interlocking rings that glowed faintly, rotating slowly in 3 dimensions. Small lights pulsed along its surface, moving in patterns that seemed both deliberate and random.
"This is the Nexus," the envoy said, her voice echoing softly in the chamber. "It contains the records of countless civilizations, their choices, their triumphs, their failures.
It can reveal wisdom, but only to those who understand how to see it. You must navigate it, human, and show what your kind can do." Elias approached cautiously. He had seen similar holographic tools in human research facilities, but nothing on this scale. The Nexus was alive in a way that no human device could be. It seemed aware, responding to his presence with subtle shifts in its light patterns. "How does it work?" he asked, though he knew the answer might not be simple. "You must find your path through understanding," the envoy said. "Do not try to force it. Force is meaningless here."
"Only insight will guide you."
Elias nodded and reached out, letting his fingers hover near the surface of the sphere. As he did, the lights shifted, forming patterns that resembled symbols and maps. He realized that the Nexus was showing him information about civilizations and worlds he had never seen. It displayed choices that species had made in response to crises, plagues, resource shortages, conflicts, and natural disasters. He took a deep breath and began to think, not about what he could control, but about what he could understand. Each pulse of light seemed to ask a question. What would you do? How would you respond? What is your reasoning? The first scenario was a world devastated by environmental collapse. The population had been forced to abandon their cities, leaving behind ruins and scorched land. The Nexus showed options: exploit, dominate, flee, or rebuild. Elias studied the patterns carefully. Humans would rebuild, he said aloud, though the words were for himself as much as the Nexus. We would preserve knowledge, protect the environment, and help the population recover. We do not destroy what can be saved. We act with long-term understanding, not short-term gain. The lights shifted again, faster now, showing the next scenario. This time, a young species was facing invasion from a neighboring planet. The options appeared: resist with force, submit, negotiate, or flee. Elias paused. He could feel the weight of responsibility in his choice. He knew that humans had faced similar dilemmas countless times.
"We negotiate first," he said, "seeking understanding."
Only when all efforts fail do we defend ourselves. Strength is not always measured by force, but by the ability to preserve life and knowledge. That is the human way. The Nexus responded immediately. The lights pulsed faster, almost like a heartbeat, and new patterns appeared. These were challenges humans had never faced before. Complex mathematical systems governing energy flow, social structures that seemed impossible to navigate, ethical dilemmas with no clear solution. Elias focused. He did not panic. He reminded himself that humans had survived chaos and complexity for millennia. One by one, he solved the scenarios not with brute force, but with reasoning. He considered consequences, the needs of others, and the long-term outcomes. With each correct choice, the Nexus pulsed brighter, almost approvingly. The envoy watched silently, her silver eyes studying him. She had seen many species attempt the Nexus, and most failed quickly. They tried to dominate it, to force answers through brute intellect, or to rush through challenges. Elias, however, moved carefully, thoughtfully. He thought not only about the problem, but about the people involved, the choices made, and the balance of consequences. Hours seemed to pass. Elias did not notice. He was focused entirely on the Nexus, moving through scenario after scenario, connecting patterns, understanding civilizations he had never encountered, and applying human logic in ways the Concord had never expected. At last, the sphere pulsed with a bright, steady light. The pattern stabilized, forming a clear path forward. Elias stepped back, exhausted but exhilarated. The envoy approached, her expression unreadable, though Elias could sense a subtle shift. "You have done what few could," she said finally. "You have navigated the Nexus, not with strength, not with speed, but with understanding. Your kind has something unique, something we rarely see, the ability to consider, to empathize, and to act wisely in the face of uncertainty." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words. Humanity survives because we do not act blindly. We think, we learn, we adapt. We endure not because we are strongest, but because we are willing to understand. The envoy remained silent for a long moment, then stepped closer. "Your species has potential," she said softly. "Potential that could rival even the oldest civilizations in this Concord. You are not the strongest, but you are clever. You do not dominate, but you influence. You do not demand obedience, yet you command respect." Elias felt a surge of pride tempered by humility. He knew that humanity's journey among the stars had only just begun. The trials of the Concord were far from over, but he had proven that human strength lay not in force, but in intellect, patience, and resilience. "Now," the envoy said, "there is one final challenge in this stage. You will face a scenario that tests not only understanding, but creativity, empathy, and vision. It is the most difficult of all. Only those who can see beyond immediate answers, who can imagine possibilities that others overlook, can succeed." Elias took a deep breath. He had been through many challenges already, yet he felt ready. Human history was filled with impossible problems solved through ingenuity and cooperation. This trial, whatever it was, would require the same qualities. He stepped forward, ready to face the unknown. The lights of the Nexus shifted again, forming a new display. It showed a galaxy in turmoil, civilizations on the brink of collapse, natural disasters threatening countless worlds, and political structures failing under pressure. The question was clear. How could stability be achieved without domination, without force, without coercion? Elias studied the problem carefully. He saw patterns and connections that were not immediately obvious. He thought about humanity's history, how humans had faced plagues, wars, environmental disasters, and social upheavals. He thought about how humans had survived by cooperating, sharing knowledge, and adapting creatively to challenges. "We must connect," he said aloud, "not control. We must share understanding, not impose obedience. We must create systems that allow civilizations to learn from each other, to support each other, and to grow together. That is how stability is achieved, not by force, but by cooperation and mutual respect." The Nexus responded with a burst of light, brighter than anything Elias had seen before. The patterns shifted rapidly, aligning into a structure that seemed almost alive. It was clear that the solution had been accepted. Elias stepped back, exhausted, yet a deep sense of accomplishment filled him. The envoy approached, her expression more open now than ever. "You have shown something remarkable," she said. "Your kind does not rely on strength, speed, or age. You rely on intelligence, empathy, and perseverance. You do not dominate, but you influence. You do not obey blindly, but you endure. This is rare. This is valuable. This is human?" Elias bowed slightly, not because he was ordered to, but because he felt genuine respect for the opportunity he had been given. "Thank you," he said softly. "Humanity has much to learn, but we also have much to offer. We survive by understanding, and we rise by acting wisely. That is our way." The envoy regarded him silently for a long moment, then spoke again. "Perhaps we underestimated your species. Perhaps we have much to learn from you as well. This is only the beginning, human. The trials ahead will be more complex, more subtle, and more demanding. But you have proven that humans possess qualities we have rarely seen in any species. Insight, patience, creativity, resilience. You have passed this stage of the trial," Elias exhaled, feeling both relief and anticipation. The first two trials had tested his understanding, patience, and ingenuity. This third stage had tested his creativity, empathy, and vision. He had succeeded, not through strength or speed, but through the quiet power of thought, the subtle courage of patience, and the human ability to imagine a better path forward. As he left the chamber, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. Humanity's journey among the stars would not be easy, but it was possible. They would face challenges, misunderstandings, and tests that no human could have imagined. Yet they would endure, not because of power, but because of insight, courage, and persistence. And somewhere deep inside him, Elias knew that the final stage of the Concord's trials would require everything humanity had to offer, and perhaps even more. Yet he also knew that humans were capable of rising to the occasion, as they always had, with thought, with patience, and with quiet, unshakable strength. Elias walked through the endless corridors of the Concord, feeling the weight of every expectation on his shoulders. Each step was measured, each thought deliberate. The previous trials had tested his reasoning, his patience, and his creativity. Now, the final stage awaited him, a challenge that would define humanity's place among the stars. The chamber he entered was different from all the others. It was vast, domed, and filled with soft flowing light that seemed to respond to his presence. At the center, a raised platform bore a single pedestal with a transparent sphere. Within the sphere swirled a galaxy, bright and alive, its stars flickering like tiny lanterns. Around it, floating panels displayed the histories, conflicts, and cultures of countless species. The High Envoy stepped forward, her silver eyes watching him closely. "This is the Hall of Reflection," she said. "Here you will face the ultimate question. How does humanity define its role in the galaxy? How will your species shape the future, not through conquest, but through understanding? Your response will determine your standing within the Concord."
Elias approached the pedestal and studied the swirling galaxy. He could feel the weight of countless possibilities, each star a potential story, each planet a potential civilization.
The challenge was clear. He needed to show that humanity could rise not by force, but by guiding, inspiring, and protecting the balance of life in the galaxy. He thought of his people, the billions who had survived wars, plagues, and disasters on their fragile planet. He thought of their creativity, their compassion, their unyielding curiosity. He thought of every moment in human history when ordinary people had chosen cooperation over dominance, empathy over indifference, and patience over impulse. "I understand," he said quietly, more to himself than to the envoy. "Humanity does not seek power for its own sake. We do not seek to dominate, to rule, or to conquer. Our strength lies in understanding, in resilience, and in the courage to act wisely, even when the path is unclear. We endure because we think, because we care, and because we learn from every challenge we face." The spear responded immediately. The galaxy within it began to shift, stars moving to reveal patterns, connections, and networks. Elias realized that the hall was testing more than his words. It was testing his vision, his ability to imagine a galaxy shaped not by fear, but by cooperation and insight. He gestured toward the networks of stars, explaining his vision aloud. Humanity's role is to connect, not control. To observe, to learn, to guide, and to assist. We can help civilizations understand each other, share knowledge, and solve problems together. Conflict is inevitable, but it can be managed through dialogue, creativity, and trust. That is how we endure. That is how we shape a future worth living for all EIs. The envoy remained silent, but Elias sensed a shift in the room. The other Aurelians who had followed him silently tilted their heads, moved their hands in subtle gestures. They were listening, but not merely hearing. They were considering, calculating, reevaluating.
"Your vision is ambitious," the envoy said finally. "Many species would speak of order, law, or dominance.
You speak of connection, understanding, and shared growth. Why should the Concord trust humanity to guide rather than disrupt?" Elias smiled faintly. "Because humanity has learned to survive by understanding its limits. We know we are not the strongest. We know we are not the oldest. But we endure because we act with foresight and care. We rise not by crushing others, but by helping each other rise. That is why the Concord can trust us, not because we demand it, but because our actions will earn it."
The sphere pulsed brightly, as if approving his words.
Lights cascaded across the chamber, forming constellations that mirrored Elias's vision. The galaxy within the hall seemed to resonate with his understanding, as though it recognized the human approach, patience, intelligence, and empathy combined with courage and resilience. "You have answered well," the envoy said, her voice softer than before. "Yet there is one final demonstration. One act that will show the Concord that humans truly embody the principles they claim. You must take a choice, here in this chamber, that reflects humility, understanding, and the courage to act for the greater good." Elias looked around the room. The panels now displayed situations where civilizations had acted selfishly or with arrogance. He saw worlds devastated by pride, alliances broken by fear, and resources wasted by greed. He realized the trial was not just about strategy, but about principle, about demonstrating that humanity's way could be applied in practice, not just in words. He stepped closer to the sphere, placing his hands lightly on its surface. The swirling galaxy responded, slowing, pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Down, he felt the weight of choice pressing down on him. It was not a personal choice. It was a choice for all of humanity. And yet it felt deeply personal, as if the fate of his people rested on his judgment alone. "I choose to act with understanding," he said firmly. "I choose to help civilizations communicate, to foster trust, and to encourage growth. I choose to lower myself when needed, not in submission, but in humility. I choose to guide, to listen, and to learn alongside others. Humanity's strength lies in its ability to act wisely, to endure, and to inspire others to rise with us." The sphere pulsed with radiant light, brighter than Elias had ever seen. The galaxy within it shifted, reorganizing itself to reflect the principles he had spoken. The Aurelians in the chamber moved closer, silent but attentive. And then, the High Envoy herself did something unexpected. She stepped down from the platform, lowering herself before Elias, not as a gesture of submission, but as a sign of recognition, respect, and acknowledgement. Elias froze, surprised. The Aurelians had always demanded hierarchy, obedience, and reverence. Yet here she was, the most powerful being in the room, demonstrating that understanding and humility were greater than authority and tradition. "You have shown us," she said softly, her eyes meeting his, "that strength is not always measured by domination, and power is not always earned through fear. Your species understands wisdom, resilience, and compassion. You do not demand respect. You inspire it. That is humanity's true gift." Elias felt a swell of emotion, though he kept it contained. This was not about personal triumph. It was about humanity, about the billions who had endured, learned, and grown through history. It was about proving that humans could hold their place among the stars, not by crushing others, but by elevating everyone they touched. "The Concord will take note of your actions," the envoy continued. "Humanity has earned its place, not through force, but through insight, courage, and humility. You have proven that your species can influence the galaxy positively, that your choices reflect understanding, and that your potential is immense. Perhaps, in time, humans will teach even the oldest civilizations lessons they have never learned." Elias bowed slightly, not because it was demanded, but because it felt right. "Thank you," he said. "Humanity does not seek praise or dominance. We seek understanding, and we rise together with others."
"That is our way. That is how we endure.
That is how we survive among the stars." The chamber fell silent for a moment, filled only with the soft hum of energy.
Then the envoy nodded, and the other Aurelians began to acknowledge him in quiet, deliberate gestures. Elias realized that a profound change had occurred. Humanity had not only passed the trials, they had reshaped the way the Concord viewed strength, wisdom, and leadership. As he left the Hall of Reflection, Elias felt a sense of calm purpose. The trials were complete, but his journey, and humanity's journey among the stars, was only beginning. He looked out at the endless galaxy, shining with stars and possibilities. Every world, every civilization, every choice represented a chance to connect, to learn, and to grow. Elias knew that humans would face misunderstandings, challenges, and conflicts in the years to come. Yet, he also knew that their greatest strengths were not measured in weapons, fleets, or age. They were measured in creativity, empathy, resilience, and the courage to act wisely even when the path was uncertain. Somewhere in the distance, the stars seemed to pulse in response to his thoughts. Humanity's story among the stars was just beginning, and already it had left a mark. The Concord had seen it, the galaxy would feel it, and humans themselves would carry it forward, rising above challenges not through dominance, but through understanding.
And as Elias looked out into the infinite expanse, he understood something profound. The true measure of a species was not how it could bend others to its will, but how it could elevate itself while lifting others along the way. Humanity had done this, and in doing so, it had inspired even the oldest beings in the universe to rethink the meaning of strength, leadership, and greatness. Elias smiled quietly. The trials were over, but the journey had only begun. Humanity had shown the stars what it meant to endure, to act wisely, and to rise with courage, and the galaxy would never forget.